Name of the project, so final deliverables. I'm calling it the four A4s and a vision. I felt these top three images might be a bit of um, an inspiration, but a bit of a parallel to what we've been talking and dealing with all quarter. If you're not familiar with the work of Buckminster Fuller and his geodesic domes, I think he always dreamt and talked about larger visions. Spaceship Earth, most famously quoted by him. So you can see him actually hanging on the geodesic kind of prototype with the Black Mountain College in, I think it's in the Carolinas somewhere. Can't quite remember the state, but so from studies and prototypes to larger scale tests to the vision, and this is a geodesic dome kind of encapsulating parts of Manhattan. And again, I think you can see perhaps kind of the parallels of everything starts with a seed, and the more we push and lean on it, I think it allows us to kind of go places that we didn't imagine were possible. And ultimately, I think this is perhaps the story of our quarter, that the role of the architect in some cases is to envision and participate in a future that is not yet here. So anyway, I felt this might be a point of a connection to an existing model. So these four A4s are broken down into individual parts. Most of them, the first three, you're probably well underway, but it's also an opportunity to kind of expand on these and continue to refine them. So the first A4 is, as we know by now, is the aerial image of a chosen site condition, extracted from your QGIS at 2,000 feet. The evaluation criteria for this particular image is obviously the kind of image quality. We're also opening it up that there could be a slight kind of a post-editing process included in this, and that is sort of adjusting some of the levels in a way to either increase contrast or elevate certain textures. Proper scale, I think that's key. Also, the attention to the site conditions outlined by the four chosen teams here. So we have the Big Green, the Petrofesto, and the Funtown, or the Green Tea Manifesto. So if you're unfamiliar what they proclaimed, I think you want to check back in with them and also double check that your site actually conforms to their vision. The second A4 is the drawing that you're currently working on, and I think thanks to Don to continue to elevate the level of work with his own field drawings that sort of show up on our channel. So thanks, Don, for making those. I think they're a true inspiration to see what's possible in terms of graphical clarity and technique. So the field drawing is one, same scale as your 2,000 feet aerial image. Again, I can't stress this enough. If you're still vague or uncertain of what this whole field drawing is really about, I'd say continue to reread Stan Allen's field conditions and unpack some of those diagrams. Personally, it took me a couple tries to understand exactly what Stan Allen was arguing for, but it's almost like a bug. Once you get it, you can't get rid of it. And you'll find yourself that these kind of ideas of the field conditions is present in our everyday life. Things that we encounter, we see, we can observe, we can see behave. The field behaves in a particular way. So it's something that we'd encourage all of you to keep revisiting. And I think it will show in the actual drawing for sure. The evaluation criteria here, the rigor of investigation evidenced in the drawing, clarity and quality of the graphic communication, So well put in Dom's examples. I think the clarity and quality of the graphic communication is exceptional, and also the evidence of the strategy. If for some reason, or if you feel it helps you identify the field strategy through writing, I'd encourage everyone to maybe keep track in sort of like take notes on your drawings, to just hold yourself accountable for the things that you think you're isolating or identifying, and have a kind of log besides it. For me personally, that always helps to kind of identify in writing what I'm trying to draw, in order to prevent me from drifting. But sometimes drifting could be a productive method too. So the third A4, I'd say this is probably a drawing that's well underway too for most of you, is the aerial crop from your first A4, and it's scaled to 1/32. This drawing includes a couple elements. One is it needs to include information from your field drawing in addition to what we have as sort of technical documentation, as in topo lines, building structures, street edges, property edges, and surface properties. So it's a combination. It's a merging of the two pieces. We've included what I would consider a seminal piece of work here as a way of understanding how perhaps a large-scale firm would approach some of this. In most of us, or some of us weren't born yet, but in 1982 or 4 is when OMA submitted their proposal for the Parc de la Villette proposal in Paris. They didn't win, but it's still a project that gets talked about quite often. So I've included the website here for you guys to directly observe their visuals and process of how they came about producing these drawings. Once again, I think it's an accumulation of multiple layers superimposed. So check that out. I think it's also commendable how transparent they are with their own process. Obviously, the tools were slightly different, but good ideas don't have an expiration date, in my opinion. And then the evaluation criteria for this particular drawing will be the level of resolution. At what level can you resolve this, where the building actually hits the ground? Rigor in translation and coherent quality of graphic communication. So in most cases, the graphic approaches and resolution will vary from project to project, but I'd say this is a conversation between you and your instructor. So these are the first 3 A4s. I'm going to guess in most cases, none of this is really new, or it should not. The other, and this is a bit of an open curveball, to use baseball terminology. So we labeled this as the 4 is, what would you like to say about your project in one drawing? I think that's a loaded question, and I think it's going to require you to revisit perhaps some of the more exciting or compelling moments that you felt were sort of instrumental to your project, as far back as 302. On top here, 3 visual examples of perhaps techniques or methods, right? So kind of from the collage to the post-digital to something that is more in the kind of painterly realm, or a reconstructed aerial view. And I think we have a few videos in terms of the technique on how to do this, posted by Don. And or, so either or, if you feel compelled to pursue perhaps a kind of technical drawing set as it relates to perhaps some of the facade related to the Grasshopper scripts that we've been working on. Two examples here are, I think, almost without words, we could say the cross column, or the column by Mies van der Rohe for the German pavilion in Barcelona is probably the quintessential detail that would say this is the idea of the project. It's in the column. Not so much the tectonic. Yeah, we can see the tectonics of the column, but it's also the cladding of it with the polished stainless steel surface as a way of, there is a column, but it also aims to disappear. The other is a more sort of specific take on the louver system, currently being constructed at Arizona State, and you can see a kind of both a combination of a render and a combination of a technical diagram, and perhaps a few words on the way we're going to find a way to unpack kind of the degree of involvement with the last A4, and that'd be the evaluation criteria for this will be at the low end of the minimal bar, and I'd suggest everyone aims higher than this, but at the lowest end it will be like if there's a render or a visualization of your project that is very tool specific, communicates maybe an idea of sort of generic both in its graphic execution. It operates on kind of default settings driven by a particular software, and it sort of misses the point of a larger idea of the project. So that's, I'd say everyone should look beyond that. And the in-between, I think we find ourselves somewhere in between, and we have to dig a lot deeper to kind of elevate from in between into the high spectrum. So in between I would define as something more specific than the tooling in your low approach, or more polished than the low from the technical standpoint approach, and then the approaching a larger idea but misses critical elements. So it's starting to look at larger elements. Is the drawing addressing the larger issues? If it is on a kind of urban scale, I'd imagine it will kind of talk about that at the level that it is understood as something that operates at that scale. The high performs here, the high performers would be, I think, hitting the notes of there's evidence of critical thinking. So that goes back to your manifesto writing. It's sort of positioned clearly. It's the way the image is framed, the choices of image, sophisticated techniques. So I think the most sophisticated work happens where you no longer can discern what type of techniques are being deployed, and it immediately kind of transfers into the discussion of a vision and an idea. There's a level of risk involved, a sense of innovation, and I'd say above all, there's evidence of reference. And I think that's the critical piece that we've been looking for, I think, in this entire quarter, is to find ways to connect dots from what we do in our own studio work as it relates to the reading and the conversations about architecture. In our case, it was about the manifestos, Stan Allen's field conditions. We need to find ways where we can connect your understanding into a visual form. It's a tough thing to do, but I think the clearer you are with your ideas, it gets easier. But I think the getting to the point where what you're doing becomes really clear to you, then I think the production of the visual information is kind of sort of the icing on the cake. On that note, maybe I can pause and I'll stop sharing my screen, and we can migrate into a Q&A session on this, clarifications, and so forth. So I'll hold back here. So I'm looking at just the sheets here in Miro. Any questions?
So it's a main focus on site/site conditions, and then after how we use the manifesto to kind of situate our building in a more technical sense on it, kind of as you progress through the numbers of A4s.
Was there a question in that, or I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding it right. It's kind of basically from the first A4 through the last, it kind of walks you through the process of choosing the site, then pulling out its details, then based off of a manifesto, designing the building for it.
Yeah, I think that's one way of wrapping all these things together. Correct. Yeah. So you can see that it starts with an idea, right? And it sort of culminates in a visual that is directly related to the overarching kind of vision of the project. Maybe one note about an earlier comment. It said, like, if this is kind of the minimum requirement, this means we'd ask everyone to actually address all four. But I know we have also projects that are farther than others in terms of the kind of resolution. So if you feel as if you can take on like two visuals in the fourth A4, or you can take on both the technical and the kind of the vision part, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I think for some of you, there's an opportunity to like really finish this project in a way, you know. I think you know, some of you are in the position to really wrap this thing up, and that last drawing can really really help close the loop, you know. For others, I think this last drawing can be used to investigate specific things that, like, if you were to continue with this project, that they would be the things that you would need to develop, you would like to kind of like pursue more, or raise, like, you know, it would like almost initiate like a series of next steps. So it's going to vary. That's why we wanted to leave that open-ended. It's this varying range of kind of where everybody is. But yeah, for some of you, I think Philip is right. This drawing could kind of read as, I mean, what if, I don't know. I mean, someone could have a section in here, you know. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, what if you went there and really for the first time evaluated kind of the sectional kind of qualities of the project relative to the ground condition that you established, you know, through your field. So I think for some of you, and you know, and like Philip said, I think that's where we can help you when we're working with you as teachers, just, you know, kind of on a one-on-one basis, just identify what might be what that drawing can be. And it's worth mentioning. It's also, I mean, it's something that should really, this is an opportunity. Like I always feel like, you know, maybe there's references that you guys are saying, it's like, wow, you're not quite working on what you want to be working on. Well, this is it, you know, like there's an opportunity here to actually pinpoint and develop exactly what you want to develop out of this project. In addition to the things that we're asking you to do, that gives us a sense that you have proficiency with regards to kind of large level site kind of site design thinking. So we want to make sure you guys have that kind of like as a in your tool belt. But then this last drawing is much more about like, well, you know, if it felt like this, if this quarter was kind of aimed in a direction that was taking you away from something that you wanted to get out of your project, then use that opportunity now to do that. And I just want to reiterate what Ty was saying. The third A4, the one where, you know, we kind of translate the field drawing, which the field drawing is more, you know, kind of more loose, more open-ended in a sense. When we bring that to that third sheet at the 1/32 inch to 1 foot scale, we want to see your building in there. your project, your housing kind of spec. I mean, that's the whole point, right? So I had this for a moment. I was like, are you guys building different, like, are you guys making new buildings? To me, that would be kind of a waste of last quarter. So I would definitely I'd be focusing on that and how the field, right, assisted you in packing your project into this kind of ambiguous field, this otherwise open, ambiguous, vacant field. I don't know what you guys think about like just directing to the instructors about benchmarks in terms of timing. You know, what do you guys think about, like, by what day would we, you know, like, should certain things be wrapped up in order to kind of stay on track? How would we know? Just kind of open-ended conversation about kind of just to help the students understand time management a little bit. How would we know we're on track in terms of, you know, timing?
We've got 5 classes left, including today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would they be presenting on day 5, or is there another class left after that?
Yeah, we have week 11 for a final review.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is more. And
That's a kind of a loaded question, Don. Like,
Yeah.
everyone's gonna have to like come up with some. I'm always like, let's see as much as you can every class period from now on is kind of the answer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's kind of crunch time right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is the 2 week, or week and a half magic hour.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
magic hour.
Magic week. 2 weeks.
The magic week.
I think just from last meeting, I would say, you know, the big push probably for most would be to getting that field dialed in at that 32nd level, or, you know, getting it cropped and figured out what the footprint is doing, or how that field translates now to a representation of a building mass or something. I feel like that's, well, at least for my group, that's what I want to be seeing. But I don't know. There's so many ways they could go for it.
It's like a
The
parallel
big kind of-
process.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, the one thing we do know is that generally we know that the three A4s are generally in the works right now. Like it's been in motion. I mean, the field drawings, for crying out loud, and we've been doing this for like, I don't know, like a month, it seems like. And then we have oh, did I hear someone? Oh, so we know we have like the aerial, kind of the aerial photograph down pretty close. You know, I mean, it could, like Philip was saying, you know, it could use maybe some, you know, some curve treatment, some, you know, is it black and white? I don't know. Are you using, you know, are you highlighting certain textures or something just from the aerial? We know we have that. We know we have the 1 to 32nd underway. You know, we have that kind of base drawing going. We have some fields starting to emerge. We know we have for some of us, we have a field concept going. So those are in the works. But what we just delivered today was that final drawing. You know, and for me, I would say by Friday, I'd like to have like maybe a storyboard. You know. Like a certain kind of sketch or something of what that last sheet might be. And I think my guess is for a lot of you, you're going to know kind of pretty quickly what that wants to be, just judging from maybe, you know, what your interest is in this, it has been in this project for so long. So, but I would push that by Friday, because again, it's only 5 classes that we have a touch. You know, that's 5 classes we have to really kind of look at your work. So we need to get that last drawing up and running, you know, as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think maybe a note related to that about getting things sort of framed and outlined storyboard as quickly as possible is also one of the main reasons or points about the kind of, let's say, sort of minimal requirements is as a way for all of you to succeed in on all sheets. So it's not by volume, but it's about by resolution and how much refinement we can actually embed in these 4 sheets. Sorry, I might have, did I drone anyone out here? Or
we were getting a little feedback, so it's normal by now. But yeah, that last sheet is just yet another opportunity for an idea to emerge. You know? And I would just, I don't know if you guys agree, but it's 4:30, you know, 4:40 p.m. Today. I would recommend, I'm imagining that we're gonna break loose, unless we wanted to look at that OMA website, you know, together. We could.
Yeah, I have it open. That's cool.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I think I don't know. Let's just, I don't know. I feel like we could talk about that one more time.
Okay.
Just
One more. Yeah.
yeah, because I know the sticky point is just this idea of moving from the field intervention to that 1/32 scale, like kind of like what OJ was saying. Here's just yet another case study we love OMA because why? Because they operate at a theoretical level, but they are so prolific in terms of what they've built. You know, at the scale that they've built, they kind of encapsulate like an academic process with, but extending their ideas into the actual physical world. So this is the project. Philip, do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Sure. I mean, I can attempt to do this.
Well, I know.
This is loaded. So a bit the backstory, I think, is, and I think I alluded to it in the intro, is that the Parc de la Villette, I think for a long period of time was considered a kind of blighted area within Paris, and they finally initiated an international competition to see how to revamp a valuable piece of real estate in Paris into something that is of a public park. The two finalists, I don't remember all the other entries, but for now, it's like, what, 40 years later, close to that, we still talk about the two projects essentially that get talked about most, primarily because they vary in contrast in approach to an urban problem. The winning project ended up being executed by Tschumi, Bernard Tschumi, and that project in itself, I think, is a really fascinating one too. And I'm not taking any sides here, but I'd say we have probably more well-documented kind of evidence of the approach of OMA's take on an urban intervention and what it means to do something for the public. And their website, I think, is still sort of comprehensive in that regard of what the park was about, but also what their entry entailed. So this should look like a familiar format to you guys, and that is being able to articulate an idea, right? And so the major programmatic components are distributed in horizontal bands, right, across the site, creating a continuous atmosphere in its length and perpendicular rapid change in experience, right? So that's talking about going with the band or perpendicular to the band, and it actually will facilitate a different experience. Some facilities.
And that's geometry, Yep. So here enters like a geometric concept and how geometry translates into real human experience, right?
Yeah, and then so some of the facilities, right? And I think we could see this in your program or in your field drawings too. Is like, is it kiosks, is it playgrounds, is it barbecue spots distributed mathematically according to different points in the grids, right? So it could be it's never more than like 300 feet away from one public like grill to the next, for example. The addition of a round forest as architectural elements. So you'll see that in the drawings. And then it's a series of connections. And in most cases, this varies in terms of the width, the speed, and capacity. And as an overlay, it's all about superimpositions. That's a kind of where intersections happened. So in the second phase, so this was a kind of revolutionary take. They said like, well, in order to revamp a large urban park, it can't be done as one single move. At first, we're going to have to instill some of these main ideas or start with certain seeds. And then the second phase would include more definite kind of programming. So it's a phased approach. And I think there's discussions and writings on what the jury actually thought about that and so forth. So the elegy for the vacant lot, right? So, I mean, that's some fine writing right here. And obviously with the kind of reference to his Manhattan writing, so Delirious New York. So you can see there's a piece of writing about it. This is all project specific. So you can go all down here. This is the reference, and they're transparent on the diagrams. So these are the programmatic strips, but you access and circulation go perpendicular to the actual strips, points and grids as confettis. I can't really get to this part of the diagram, but it's a kind of program block that gets carved out and redistributed. Now it's to the actual process work, right? So these are the kind of bars. That's the shape of the park, and then it's a drawing of events and programs distributed. Again, you could see the kind of connection. Either there is a connection to the exterior, or it's treated as an island. In their case, it was sort of the perimeter was. These bands are in connection with the outside. We'd all love to do the large scale models too, so you can see that the bands are still present. The bands are sprinkled with specific program, right? From tennis courts to, I don't know, sort of fields of other programmatic potential. These are the forests. You could see, I don't know what this rocket's doing here. So planetarium, surfaces, cutting across. They're absolutely, these are just nuts. Congestion without matter. So this is a kind of perspectival view across it. There's the entire PDF of this. So there's a catalog of what the park actually looks like. This is a direct extraction out of the SMXL that I think all of you have in your architectural library, right? Anyway, so images of the actual the process work on the drawings. So you could see, right, it starts as initial like outlines establishing certain corridors. This is the main connection to the city, to a kind of perspectival unpacking of what these things actually would be, right? It's the architecture is at the level of just sort of blocks, right? And these are these little confetti nodes of these kind of public like barbecues and events, right? Points and grids. And you can see that the points and grids is actually, it's quite interesting to see that Bernard Tschumi, the points and lines of the points and grids actually was also a means to organize and distribute activities. And in Tschumi's case, it was very, very similar to this, but this is where he kind of developed the ideas of the architectural foley. And that's maybe, that's a separate conversation, what that actually is, but you can see a kind of distributed field of different programs. Obviously, kind of the graphic quality of this too is to highlight these points, right? And it's not about a high resolution of the individual pieces, but it's a coherent strategy. The strips, I think we all know what that is. These are competition boards. So the competition board is a kind of series of cross sections. And remember correctly that the banding was one way of experiencing the park, and then when you stitch across the park perpendicular to the bands, that's the kind of event you would experience. So you can see the drawing and the idea are directly related. Not exactly sure what these are. I think these are just process work of kind of developing ideas for other programs and activities throughout the site. So yeah, these, I don't know, I think everyone should at least check out the writing of this stuff. I think that's maybe a reference to earlier comment is having an idea about what your field aims to do, identify strategies. It's a layering of different parts, right? It's extensions, it's intersections, it's a discussion on geometry, but it also has programmatic elements embedded.
You know, and right there, Philip, in that top phrase, you know, the program by the city of Paris was too large for the site, leaving no space for a park. The proposed project is not for a definitive park, but for a method that, combining programmatic instability with architectural specificity, will eventually generate a park. So it's almost as if he's building capacity for like an undefined, like the park to emerge kind of as a result of its use, you know, it's such a, you know, it's like this dynamic, it's like he's like planting the seeds for growth to happen in an indeterminate way, you know, and
look at the art of this writing. It's 3 lines, and it's just, this is like,
it's huge.
Dropping like just this alone belongs in a museum, right? Of like a historical artifact of architectural thinking.
Yeah. He totally questions the typical like programmatic approach to architecture in that sense. It's like no, he's like, this is about a growth pattern. It's a growing, dynamic, shifting field. Yeah.
So and notice like the discussion, it's an architectural specificity, and that has to do with program. So it's not a discussion of what the building looks like or how big it is. It's that the main driver is actually the idea of what the building or the built environment is able to facilitate. If the built environment can't facilitate certain programmatic activities, then it renders the building hollow.
Yeah. It's kind of the question, you know, like people misinterpret OMA a lot, but it's like the question of, it's like it's method over aesthetics, even though the method turns into an aesthetic eventually, right? The method results in an aesthetic, but it's not the other way around, where you're like, okay, I have something, I want it to look a certain way, and I'm gonna develop a method to get there. It's the other way around. It's right there. It's like the proposed project is not for a definitive park, meaning it's not a definitive aesthetic symbol. It's not a definitive, it's not an authorship concept. It's not a definitive form, but for a method that it's totally reframed. I mean, that's why I agree that this 3 sentences is earth-shattering in terms of a jab at like the kind of tradition of architecture in general, you know. And that's why he's controversial, by the way. I think some people don't like that because it's, you know, they're like, well, he's just not. I've heard that. I've heard some of my teachers say that, like, he doesn't take architecture seriously, you know. And it's like, no, he's questioning the very foundations of architecture, while generating like, probably, I don't know who's built the most projects on the planet, but I'm sure he's right up there.
Oh no, he's not. He's not even close. No.
But
maybe a collection of most referenced projects. But in terms of scale, I mean, there are people banging out buildings like just like you can't keep up, right? But they're not even worth talking about.
Well, that's not even
it requires that kind of architecture too. It's like the background, like you got to host certain things. Like it's not everything. I'd say would have to fall into this kind of deeper like discussion. Yes, I think to all of us, the built environment is tremendously important, right? But I think it's exactly the problem we have is building one building at a time won't solve the housing issue.
Yeah.
Right? Like the single ADU in your backyard is going to do exactly nothing to the housing crisis.
Yep.
That's just that. I guess that's an opinion, but
No, I don't know. I mean, I think that's pretty empirical. Yeah.
so
Oh,
to bring it back to the studio's charge is that the housing or the building that you're proposing from here to Canada, and that's why I really love that line. It's like, you know, from San Isidro to like Vancouver. I mean, that's rad. Or the flooded plains. I think we have the ingredients for something that I think is really provocative and actually has tackles the issues of an imminent crisis that we're in, and that is we don't have enough housing. To the point where I think it also addresses the issue of that zoning limitations are actually contributing to the shortage. So we have a couple things to talk about.
Do you guys, students, do you have any questions about this kind of, about what we just talked about, what we just shared? Does this ring any bells? Or, I mean, by now, I think, like Philip said earlier, like once we start talking about fields, it's like everything's a field. That's the irony. So you can begin to kind of like evaluate it through a different lens, like this kind of like waste space, the way space is put together, how things are occupy fields. I even think like I'm in a room right now and I'm like, this is a field. There's a field condition here, you know, like there's these partition walls, you know. It's like the walls is I'm in a field of walls, you know. It's becoming, yeah. Once it registers, it becomes a way of evaluating. It's a tool to evaluate architectural qualities, architectural space.
And in no way are we suggesting that this is an easy issue, and that's exactly why we're convinced that this is the appropriate topic for young architects who start thinking about as you get into your 4th and 5th year. That the study of architecture needs to go beyond the actual building. Yes, buildings are really important, but it's also how to think of the actual built environment in its immediate surrounding and its larger context. Trust me, I'd love to build models of this.
I know. Yeah.
It's maybe the one thing that is just like gut wrenching here is like we can't build models.
Yeah. Yeah, this format is tough for a studio kind of situation. We like, I remember I was talking to my dad about doing studio online and how, you know, it's like after sharing with him some of, like, I think I shared a photograph of like, I think it was like OJ, like working with students on like, you know, showing like with these little wood blocks, you know, and the tape and everything. And my dad's like, okay, so you're gonna try to go from like talking about architectural ideas with like wood blocks and tape to like a digital, like flat 2-dimensional environment, you know? And it's, he was right on. It's like, yeah, I was confident at the time. Oh yeah, we have this and that. We have 3-dimensional, blah blah, this and that, and you know. Yeah. But now I think through the quarter, I think we all realize it's
just imagine what we did with those blocks and 302. Try to do this digital.
It's just, there's just something. There's just a little bit of there's a membrane between us that is tough to to crack.
But we still have those in front of us, so it's putting them into a larger context. So, but I'd imagine you guys are already, it's like they're still droning on for an hour now. I know what I need to do. I'm working. I'm clicking. So how about this? at least for my section, I'm gonna break for half an hour here. And when I come back, I'd like everyone to at least have a working idea on all 4 sheets, meaning what your A4, what your first A4 will be, what your second A4 needs to do, what your third A4, and your fourth A4 perhaps. So try to have an idea ready so we can talk about it.
Yeah, same for me. Same for my group. Just say 5:30.
Same for my group.
Yeah.
Okay.
5:30.
Ditto.
Sweet. Ditto.
Okay.
All right. See you then.
See you guys.
Bye.
Adios.
You do.